Hello and welcome to Skyline's first episode tonight. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Driti Atri. Well, let me begin with a simple question here. Who's really shaping the future of the entire West Asia? Is it America? Is it China? Is it Iran? Or are America's own allies beginning to write their own rules? Tonight's 9 explosive stories are connected by just one common theme: the balance of power that is changing. And these are not any foreign policy stories. They affect global oil prices, financial market, defense partnership, international trade, and even India's strategic interests. So, without wasting any time, let's start with our first segment. For decades, one relationship defined America's presence in West Asia: the partnership between Washington and Riyadh. Whenever there was a regional crisis, it was Saudi Arabia and the United States that were usually seen standing together. American troops were stationed in the kingdom. In fact, defense cooperation expanded years after years. Saudi Arabia purchased billions of dollars worth of American military equipment. And together, both the nations tried to maintain stability across one of the world's most sensitive regions. Well, today, look what happened. Reports suggest that this particular relationship may be entering a new phase. That's right, according to reports, the Trump administration planned Operation Project Freedom, right? A mission designed to escort commercial ships traveling through the Strait of Hormuz after the tensions with Iran increased. However, Saudi Arabia reportedly refused to allow American forces to use its airspace and military bases for the particular operation. Well, the reports further claims that Washington even considered withholding important missile interception system before both the nations eventually reduced the tension. In the meantime, US officials, they are also reportedly reviewing whether to reduce some military assets inside Saudi Arabia or not. Can you now think why this matters? The Strait of Hormuz, that is not just another shipping lane. In fact, it is one of the world's most important energy lifeline. Nearly 20% of global oil passes through this particular narrow stretch of water every single day. If something disrupts shipping over there, the impact is felt everywhere, from petrol pumps to India, from petrol pumps in India to factories in Europe and financial markets in America. And that is why every military moment around Hormuz, that immediately becomes global news. In fact, reports suggest that Saudi Arabia feared that another major military operation against Iran could increase instability instead of reducing it. Over the past few years, Riyadh has slowly improved relationship with Tehran after years of rivalry here. And at the very same time, Saudi Arabia has expanded economic ties with China while continuing its defense partnership with the United States here. Well, in other words, Saudi Arabia is no longer depending on only one global power. It is trying to maintain relationships with everyone, and that reflects a much bigger change that is taking place across West Asia. Countries are no longer choosing sides as easily as they once did. Instead, they are protecting their own economic interests, regional stability, and long-term national goals here. And if these reports are actually accurate, then they signal something important here. America's traditional allies are becoming more independent, and that changes the whole geopolitical equation for every single person. But while Washington and Riyadh, both the nations, were reportedly disagreeing behind the closed doors, another superpower quietly entered the whole conversation. Well, whenever a global power steps back, there's another global power that is ready to step forward. For decades, the United States dominated diplomacy in the whole West Asia. But today, China wants a seat at that particular table too. Unlike America, China rarely sends troops into the regional conflicts here. Instead, Beijing sends diplomats. They send trade agreements, they send military infrastructure, they send economic partnership. In fact, during talks in Beijing, Chinese Foreign Minister Mr. Wang Yi, he met Saudi Foreign Minister Mr. Prince Faisal bin Farhan and urged all the sides to continue dialogue between the United States and Iran. Here, Mr. Wang, he repeated China's position that talking is better than fighting, and said that Beijing was willing to work with Saudi Arabia to reduce tension and promote long-term peace in that violent region. And now, at first glance, these comments may sound very simple, diplomatic, but they reveal something much, much bigger here. China imports a significant amount of its oil from the Gulf region. Peace in the West Asia is directly linked to China's economic growth, and any disruption in energy supplies that affects factories, it affects the industries, global trade, and that is why Beijing has invested billions of dollars across the Gulf through its Belt and Road Initiative. Unlike Washington here, which maintains military bases across the region, China is kind of trying to expand its own influence through investment, diplomacy, and economic cooperation. In the meantime, many experts believe that the whole West Asia has now become another battlefield in a global competition between America and China. Only this battle is not being fought with fighter jets this time. It is fought with diplomacy, it is fought with infrastructure, and a lot of influence. Here, China wants to be seen as a country that helps solve the conflict. Now, whether the world accepts that role, that remains to be seen. But one thing is becoming increasingly clear. The geopolitical map of West Asia is definitely changing faster than ever before. And yes, while China is trying to build trust with foreign governments, another debate is unfolding inside Washington itself. Sometimes the biggest disagreements happen within your own system. The question is, why is the United States debating a secret spy database? Ladies and gentlemen, imagine if every single major American intelligence agency shared just one giant database. A database containing the identities of suspected foreign spies, potential intelligence recruits, secret investigators, and sensitive operations from across the globe. Here, supporters say that it would make America safer, but critics, they say it could become one of the biggest intelligence risks in modern history. Well, according to these reports, the Office of the Director of National Intelligence has asked the agencies like the FBI and the CIA to provide the identities of foreign espionage targets so that they can be stored in one central system. In fact, officials supporting the proposal argue that it would improve coordination between agencies and prevent duplicate investigations. However, senior officials at both the FBI and CIA have reportedly resisted the plan, warning that concentrating such highly classified information in one place, it could expose confidential resources, compromise the ongoing investigations, and create a new security risk here. In the meantime, supporters believe that modern threats have now changed. Today, espionage that is no longer limited to secret agents exchanging documents in dark alleys. Cyber attacks, artificial intelligence, encrypted messaging platforms, financial transactions, and social media have become part of modern intelligence operations. Well, to respond effectively, agencies need faster access to the information now. But critics see another danger here. Well, if one central database is ever hacked, or if confidential information leaks, years of intelligence work, it could disappear overnight. Resources could be exposed, operations could be failed, lives could even be put at risk here. And this debate, it also raises a larger question here. How much information should government collect? And once they collect it, who should be allowed to access it? Well, as technology becomes more and more powerful, governments around the globe are facing the same challenge, finding the balance between national security, privacy, and protecting highly classified information here. And yes, while Washington continues debating this particular proposal, another disagreement involving one of America's closest allies is beginning to attract global attention here. Now, for decades, one partnership has shaped the politics of the entire West Asia more than almost any other: the partnership between the United States and Israel. No matter which party ruled Washington, Republican or Democrat, America always stood firmly behind Israel. Billions of dollars in military aid, advanced weapons, intelligence sharing, and diplomatic support made this one of the strongest alliances in the modern history. But now, reports suggest that small cracks could be appearing in that particular relationship. Ladies and gentlemen, according to recent reports, differences have emerged between Washington and Tel Aviv over the ongoing negotiations with Iran. In fact, the US Vice President, Mr. J.D. Vance, he reportedly criticized Israeli leaders for publicly attacking the US President, Mr. Donald Trump's diplomatic efforts with Tehran. In fact, he reminded Israeli officials that the US has been Israel's strongest supporters for decades and warned against undermining that partnership. However, several analysts they believe that these disagreements should not be taken for a major policy shift because American military and financial support for Israel that continues unchanged. The story, it's important because the world often assumes that America and Israel always speaks with one voice. But international diplomacy, that's really that simple, right? Even close allies disagree behind closed doors. Sometimes they disagree on military strategy, sometimes they disagree on diplomacy, and sometimes they disagree on the timing here. Here, experts say that the United States wants to keep diplomatic channels with Iran open while also maintaining pressure on Tehran here. However, Israel has repeatedly warned that Iran's nuclear program that remains its biggest security concern. That particular difference in approach, it has kind of created fresh debate now. Should diplomacy continue, or is stronger military pressure the only solution here? Well, political analysts believe that these public disagreements may appear very dramatic, but the larger strategic partnership between Washington and Tel Aviv, that remains extremely strong. The US continues providing billions of dollars in defense assistance, advanced fighter jets, and missile defense cooperation with intelligence support. So yes, while headlines may suggest tension, the long-term alliance that remains firmly in place. But even as America debates diplomacy in West Asia, well, Washington is quietly preparing for another kind of challenge. A future where nuclear deterrence once again becomes a global priority. That's right, because while peace talks continue on one side of the entire world, another race is already escalating behind the scenes. Well, the Cold War may have ended decades ago, but the nuclear race that never truly disappears. Instead, it evolved. Today, the world's biggest powers are once again modernizing their nuclear forces, and that's a challenge. According to recent reports, the United States is moving ahead with the development of its next generation W93 Mk7 nuclear warhead while also preparing future upgrades for the submarine-based nuclear deterrent. Here defense experts say that these programs, these are designed to ensure America's nuclear forces remains reliable as Russia and China continue modernizing their own strategic arsenals. And now this does not necessarily mean a nuclear war is approaching. Ladies and gentlemen, let me clarify that. Instead, it reflects how countries think about deterrence here. Here, the basic idea is simple. If your rival knows that you have a strong nuclear capability, they are less likely to attack. And that strategy has shaped global security for decades now. Today, however, the whole situation is becoming more and more complicated. Russia continues expanding several strategic weapon programs. In fact, China is rapidly increasing its military capability. Then we have North Korea, that particular nation continues military missile testing and tension involving Iran. That remains unresolved. All of this has kind of pushed nuclear modernization back to the center of global defense planning. Experts say that the next generation of nuclear system, it will be more secure, more reliable, and designed to remain operational for decades into future. But many arms control organizations, they are extremely worried. They argue that every new weapon, the program, it encourages rival to develop even more advanced system, and that could kind of begin another explosive global arms race. Once again, the entire world finds itself balancing military preparedness with hopes for lasting peace here. But yes, while America prepares for future security challenges, Iran has now delivered a fresh message regarding negotiations here. For months, the entire world has been asking just one simple question: will the United States and Iran finally reach a lasting understanding? Or will tension return once again? Ladies and gentlemen, now Iran has made its own position very, very clear in front of the entire world, not just the US. Well, according to reports, Iranian Parliament Speaker Mohammad Bagher, he said Iran remains willing to continue diplomacy, but only if the US fully respects the recently signed understanding and avoids action that Tehran considers provocative. He also declared that Iran's control over the Strait of Hormuz, that's non-negotiable, and warned that Tehran is prepared to defend its interests if necessary. And at the very same time, Iranian officials confirmed that implementation of new agreements involving Oman, it will begin over the coming weeks. Now, these statements, significant because the Strait of Hormuz remains one of the world's most strategically important waterway. Every major country is watching developments over there, so any increase in tension could immediately affect global shipping, oil supplies, and financial market. Well, Iran says that diplomacy remains possible here, but only if mutual commitments are respected. The United States, in the meantime, continues insisting that negotiations should reduce regional tension and it should improve long-term security here. In the meantime, diplomatic experts say that peace negotiations rarely move in one straight line. There are advances, there are setbacks. Public statements often sound stronger than private discussion, and both the governments frequently send different kind of messages to domestic and international audience. And that is why many analysts believe that diplomacy between Washington and Tehran that will remain uncertain for some time now. In fact, one statement can create hope here. The next can create fresh tension here, and that has become the reality of indeed the entire West Asian diplomacy today. But yes, while governments continue negotiating across conference table, another battle is taking place very quietly through intelligence network and espionage. Even after the guns fall silent, the shadow war that never really ends. Behind every military conflict, there is another battle that most people never see. A battle fought through intelligence agencies, secret informers, cyber operations, and espionage. And now Israel claims it has uncovered another chapter of that invisible war. Ladies and gentlemen, according to Israeli officials, a 20-year-old US citizen living in Jerusalem has been arrested on allegation of spying for Iran here. Investigators claim the suspect maintained contact with an individual who is linked to Iran, photographed sensitive location across Israel, and received payments for carrying out assigned tasks here. In the meantime, Israelis and Shin-based security agencies jointly investigated the case, and officials say that formal security-related charges are now expected. If these allegations are proven in the court, they once again highlight how modern conflicts are now no longer fought only by armies here. Today, a smartphone can become an intelligence tool, a photograph can become military information, and an ordinary civilian can become part of an international espionage investigation. Israeli officials, they say that they have witnessed a rise in alleged Iranian intelligence activity in recent years. They claim that foreign intelligence networks increasingly use encrypted messaging apps, social media platforms, financial incentives just to recruit people willing to gather the information here. Iran has reportedly rejected many similar accusations in the past though. Well, while Israel, that nation continues strengthening its counter-intelligence operation. And this particular story reminds us that in today's world, information has become as valuable as weapons. Countries are no longer protecting only their borders, they are protecting their data, their military facility, and their intelligence network. But yes, while Israeli security agencies investigate alleged espionage, another security scare that has unfolded in neighboring Iraq. Now in West Asia today, even the skies have become part of the battlefield. Can you imagine waking inside one of the world's most heavily protected diplomatic zones? Suddenly, security alarms that begin rising, air defense system becomes active, and an unidentified drone that appears overhead. Well, that's exactly what happened in Baghdad. According to Iraqi officials, security forces intercepted a drone after it entered the restricted airspace above Baghdad's highly fortified Green Zone. The Green Zone houses key Iraqi government buildings as well as several foreign diplomatic missions, including the US Embassy. Officials confirmed the drone. It was shot down before any damage or casualty appeared here. Although some media reports suggest that the drone may have been heading towards the US Embassy. Iraqi officials, they have not really officially confirmed that particular claim, and the drone's origin that remains under investigation. This incident once again shows how drones have changed modern security. A few years ago, countries worried mainly about missiles or fighter jets. Today, small, unmanned drones, they have become one of the biggest security challenges. They are inexpensive, they are easy to operate, they are often difficult to detect, and that is why governments around the globe are investing billions of dollars in anti-drone technology. From airports to military bases to embassies, every critical installation, it is now preparing for threats that are coming from the skies here. Fortunately, this particular incident, it ended without any casualty, but it also serves as a reminder that regional tension remain high even after ceasefire announcement. One unexpected incident, it can quickly become an international crisis. And yes, while security agencies continue dealing with military threat, another story brings very positive news for India. Sometimes diplomatic headlines are not about conflicts, they are also about opportunity. In the last segment, let's talk about several Indian companies that are found under American sanction. The restrictions affected business operations, international trade, and global partnership. And now that particular situation has completely changed. The US Embassy has officially removed 4 Indian companies from its Russia related sanction list. That's right. According to the US Treasury Department, a Hyderabad based RRG Engineering Technologies and Lokesh Machines, Hyderabad based Galaxy Bearing, and New Delhi based Shaurya Aeronautics, these companies have all been deleted from the Office of Foreign Assets Control sanction list, though the US government has not publicly explained why the companies have been removed. But this decision, it's important because sanctions can have major impact on international business. Companies face difficulties while they're dealing with global bank, international suppliers, technology partnership, and overseas customers. Removal from a sanction list, it can therefore improve business confidence and make the international transactions much easier. Well, this decision also reflects how complicated global trade has now become. Countries continue balancing economic interest, national security, diplomatic relationship, and international regulations here. Well, for India, this particular development is being closely watched because the affected companies operate in important sectors such as engineering, aerospace, and manufacturing. Basically, India's backbone. In fact, many industry experts believe stronger US India economic cooperation will eventually remain important despite ongoing geopolitical challenges involving Russia, China, and the West Asia. Well, it's another reminder that diplomacy is not only about politics here, it is also about business investment, technology, and long term economic partnership. Well, with that, we come to the end of tonight's Skyline. From changing equations between America and Saudi Arabia to China's growing diplomatic influence, from intelligence debates inside Washington to reports of differences between the US and Israel, from nuclear modernization and Iran's latest condition for talks to espionage drone threat and major relief for Indian companies. Every story tonight points towards one larger reality. The world is definitely entering a new geopolitical era. All alliances are evolving, new partnerships are emerging, technology is changing warfare, and diplomacy is becoming more complicated. Well, thanks for joining me. I'm Driti, and I'll see you in the next episode.